Hey, dear members of the Soul Stories family. Today we will bring you a romantic love story, so let's get started. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any meaningful stories. Jennifer Vale woke with a heavy head, as if someone had stuffed her skull with cotton. Early morning sunlight slipped through thin floral curtains, casting shimmering streaks across the worn wooden floor. She blinked, trying to figure out where she was. This wasn't her compact city apartment, with its blaring car horns every morning. This place was quiet, cozy, with a faint scent of pine and something deeply wrong. She turned and her heart nearly stopped. Beside her, on a double bed covered with a blue wool blanket, was a man. He lay on his side, breathing evenly, his dark hair falling messily over his forehead. Jennifer almost screamed, but caught herself, letting out a sharp hiss through her teeth instead. "What the hell is this?" She checked herself first. Cotton pajama pants, oversized t-shirt, her sleepwear from last night, still intact. No signs of anything unusual, except that she was sharing a bed with a complete stranger. The man was also in pajamas, a gray button-up and long pants, looking nothing like someone who just had a wild night. But that did little to ease her panic. Jennifer sat up, trying to recall. Last night she'd come to Willow Creek for a few days of rest, escaping the pressures of her advertising job. She'd booked a homestay through an app, described as rustic and welcoming. Then what? She remembered attending a local wine festival, just to unwind, not planning to drink much. But after a few cups of hot cider and lively music, everything blurred. A soft sound jolted her. The man stirred, opening his eyes. Deep brown, sharp eyes locked onto hers. He sat up, unhurried, but his gaze swept the room like he was analyzing a financial report. "Good morning," he said, his voice low and calm enough to make Jennifer want to scream just to shatter his composure. "Who are you, and why are we here together?" Jennifer blinked, unsure if she'd heard right. "Who am I? Who are you? This is my booked room. What are you doing in my bed?" He frowned, clearly unfazed by her outburst. "Your room? I reserved this place last week. The system must have screwed up." He stood taller than she'd expected, with a lean build that carried the confidence of someone used to being in charge. He rummaged through a bag in the corner, pulled out his phone, and checked something, muttering, "Yup, room mix-up. Great." Jennifer clutched her head, trying to process. "Fine, a room mix-up isn't a big deal. We just slept in the same bed. Nothing happened, right?" She looked at him, waiting for a clear answer. He turned, his expression flickering with mild irritation. "Nothing happened. I don't make a habit of doing anything with strangers when we're both drunk." He paused, then added, "You're not my type anyway." Jennifer's jaw dropped, torn between anger and relief. "Good. You're not my type either. But—" She trailed off as her gaze landed on a small wooden table by the window. There in the sunlight sat a gleaming silver ring. Next to it was a folded piece of paper, looking suspiciously official. She walked over, her legs feeling unsteady. With a sinking feeling, she opened the paper. The handwriting was sloppy, but the bold title was unmistakable. Marriage Certificate. Her name, Jennifer Vale, was right beside another. Elliot Grayson. Below were two shaky signatures and a glaring red seal, looking terrifyingly legitimate. No. Jennifer shook her head, her voice breaking. "This is fake, right? Someone's pranking us." Elliot, now beside her, picked up the paper and scanned it. His face didn't change, but she noticed his fingers tighten on the edge. "This is real. That's seals from the town clerk's office. I've seen it on legal contracts before." Jennifer spun around, pointing at him. "I didn't sign this. I don't even know who you are, Elliot Grayson. How could I marry you?" Elliot raised an eyebrow, setting the paper down. "You think I wanted this? I didn't plan to wake up with an unwilling wife." He paused, glancing at the ring on the table. "But it seems we got plastered last night. Or tricked. That festival. Do you remember anything?" Jennifer racked her brain. She recalled laughter, lanterns strung across the town square, and an enthusiastic old woman urging her to sign a festival guest book. She'd signed without reading, thinking it was harmless fun. "Oh no," she whispered. "That woman. She said something about eternal love and handed me another drink. Elliot nodded as if fitting a puzzle piece into place. I signed something too. A man in a suit said it was a local tradition. Clearly, we were set up. He picked up the ring, turning it between his fingers. And this is the prize, I suppose. Jennifer snatched the ring, the metal cold in her hand. It was plain, no engravings, but it fit her finger perfectly. She tossed it back on the table like it was burning. Set up or not, this ends now. We'll go to the town office, cancel this ridiculous document, and forget it ever happened. Elliot looked at her, a hint of amusement in his eyes. Is this how you always handle a crisis? Yelling and giving orders? Only when I wake up next to someone claiming to be my husband, Jennifer shot back. She took a deep breath, trying to calm down. Look, we don't know each other. We don't need to make this a big deal. Just cancel the papers, and we go our separate ways. Elliot nodded, but his gaze studied her, as if weighing something. Fine, I'll call my lawyer to check on it. But for now, don't tell anyone about this. I don't want it affecting my work. What work? Who are you to worry about that? Jennifer asked, but Elliot just shook his head. Doesn't matter. You don't need to know. He started packing his things, his movements brisk and efficient. I'll meet you at the town office on Monday when I'm back in the city. Don't do anything stupid before then. Jennifer wanted to argue, but she was exhausted and still reeling. She nodded, just wanting to leave the room as soon as possible. As she packed her bag, she glanced at the ring on the table again. She almost picked it up, but thought better of it. Leave it there, she muttered. I don't need a memento of a crazy day. She left the homestay, the sunlight outside brighter than she'd expected. Driving back to the city, she tried to focus on the work awaiting her. A big meeting with Kane Capital, the conglomerate about to buy her company. But in her mind, the image of the marriage certificate and Elliot Grayson's piercing gaze lingered, like a puzzle with no solution. She didn't know that the ring left on the table would soon find its way back to her, and with it, a man she never wanted to see again. Jennifer Vale walked into the office feeling like she'd just run a marathon through a storm. Her weekend in Willow Creek was supposed to recharge her, but instead, she'd come back with a nameless headache and a secret she wanted buried forever. A mistaken marriage to a man named Elliot Grayson. She shook her head, trying to banish the image of the scribbled marriage certificate and his piercing gaze. Focus, Jennifer, she told herself, adjusting her navy blazer. Today's a big day. The main meeting room at Brightwave Advertising was packed. Tension hung in the air as everyone awaited the representatives from Kane Capital, the conglomerate set to acquire Brightwave. As head of marketing, Jennifer was tasked with presenting the company's latest campaign, a chance to prove her team's value before the deal closed. She checked the projector slides, mentally rehearsing figures, trying to stay calm. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw that silver ring glinting on the homestay table, mocking her. Jennifer, you look like you've seen a ghost, a playful voice cut in. It was Lena, her colleague and best friend, with bouncy curls and a smile always ready to tease. Lena propped her chin on her hand, eyeing Jennifer from the next table. How was your getaway? Anything exciting? Like meeting a mysterious guy? Jennifer nearly dropped her pen. Nothing exciting, she replied quickly, her voice a bit too high. Just wine and sleep. Very boring. She turned away, pretending to review documents. But Lena raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced. Yeah, sure, Lena drawled. Your eyes are darting like crazy. Spill it. What's going on? I'm a vault for secrets. There's no secret, Jennifer snapped, but she managed a smile to soften it. Luckily, the meeting room door swung open, cutting off Lena's interrogation. Brightwave's director, Mr. Carson, entered, followed by a group of sharply dressed people from Kane Capital. Jennifer took a deep breath, steeling herself. Time to shine. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Carson began, his voice resonant. Today, we're honored to welcome the team from Kane Capital, especially their CEO, who will personally oversee this acquisition. Please meet Mr. Elliot Grayson. Jennifer was tweaking a slide on her laptop when she froze. His name rang like an alarm bell in her head. No way, she muttered, looking up, and then she went numb. The man entering the room was tall, in a deep blue suit, his dark hair neatly combed, but those sharp, dark brown eyes were unmistakable. Elliot Grayson, the man who'd been beside her in the homestay bed yesterday morning. The one named on that cursed marriage certificate. He stood there composed as if stepping out of a press conference, his gaze sweeping the room before landing on her. A subtle smile flickered on his lips, like they shared a secret no one else knew. "Pleasure to meet you all," Elliot said, his voice low and controlled. "And especially nice to see some of you again." He emphasized some, his eyes still fixed on Jennifer. Her face burned, torn between anger and embarrassment. What was he doing? Taunting her in the middle of this critical meeting? Jennifer gripped the table's edge, forcing a neutral expression. Lena beside her nudged her. "Hey, do you know him? Why is your face so red?" "Don't know him," Jennifer whispered, her voice stiff. "Just hot in here." She looked down, pretending to take notes, but her trembling hands scribbled like a grade schooler's. The meeting began, but Jennifer barely registered it. Mr. Carson introduced Brightwave, while Elliot occasionally asked questions, his voice sharp and authoritative. Each time he spoke, she felt like he was deliberately glancing at her, even if just for a moment. When it was her turn to present, she stood, focusing on her slides about the new ad campaign. But Elliot's gaze, whether teasing or probing, nearly made her misstate a figure. "Ms. Vale," Elliot suddenly spoke up as she finished, "your idea is impressive, but I'm curious. Do you think this campaign can build lasting connections with customers? A sustainable relationship, say?" Jennifer almost choked. His use of sustainable felt like an arrow aimed at their secret. She took a breath, forcing a stiff smile. "Mr. Grayson, I believe true connection only comes from clarity and no misunderstandings from the start." A soft chuckle escaped Elliot, quiet enough that only she heard. "Well said," he replied, nodding. "I look forward to seeing you prove it." The rest of the meeting passed in a haze for Jennifer. She sat down feeling like she'd survived a battle. As people began leaving, Lena grabbed her arm. "Seriously, Jennifer, what's up with you and that super hot CEO? He looked at you like he's known you forever." Jennifer shook her head, managing a laugh. "I swear, nothing's up. You watch too many movies." But inside, a storm was brewing. Elliot Grayson wasn't just a stranger from the homestay. He was Kane Capital's CEO, the man deciding her company's future, and worse, the one tied to her by a bizarre legal bond. She waited until the room nearly emptied, then hurried into the hallway where Elliot was talking with Mr. Carson. When Carson left, she approached, her voice low but sharp. "Mr. Grayson, we need to talk. Now." Elliot turned unsurprised. "Ms. Vale," he said, his tone light but teasing. "I'm guessing this isn't about the ad campaign, is it?" "Cut the jokes," Jennifer said, arms crossed, struggling to stay calm. "You know what I mean. That paper. We need to cancel it immediately, today." Elliot tilted his head, studying her. "That paper," he repeated, as if weighing it. "In such a rush? I think we should check things carefully first. These matters, they're more complicated than you think." "Complicated how?" Jennifer nearly shouted, but she lowered her voice as a colleague passed by. "We made a mistake. We were drunk. None of it's real. Sign the annulment, and we're done." Elliot stepped closer, close enough for her to catch a faint woody cologne. "Jennifer," he said, using her name for the first time, startling her. "I'm not signing anything until I'm sure it's clear. You want to make a scene, go ahead. But I'd advise keeping this quiet, for both our sakes." She stared at him, searching for a hint of jest, but his eyes were serious, almost warning. "Is that a threat?" she asked, her voice shaky. "No," he said, that subtle smile returning. "Just advice. We'll be seeing a lot of each other, Ms. Vale. I look forward to it." He turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, heart pounding with anger and a strange feeling she didn't want to admit. Back at her desk, Lena was waiting, eyes gleaming. "Come on, Jennifer. I saw you talking to him. Anything juicy?" Jennifer sighed, slumping into her chair. "Nothing juicy," she said, but in her mind, she knew things had just gotten far more complicated, and Elliot Grayson, with that damn smile, wasn't going to let her slip away easily. Jennifer Vale sat in front of her laptop in her small apartment, the flickering blue light casting shadows on her face, now marked with traces of exhaustion. 3 days had passed since the fateful Kane Capital meeting, and Elliot Grayson's name still haunted her like an unshakable melody. The marriage certificate, snapped on her phone before leaving the homestay, sat in her gallery like a ticking time bomb. She'd spent the evening researching marriage laws, desperate to escape this bizarre legal trap without turning her life into a TV drama. She clicked onto the Willow Creek Town Office website, scrolling through marriage registration rules. "No way," she muttered, spotting a line in fine print. "Marriages registered during the Wine Festival's charity event involve community funds. Annulment requires mutual consent and town council approval." Jennifer slumped back, feeling like she'd been punched in the gut. Charity funds? Town council? She'd only wanted a few days of rest, not a legal battle with an entire town. She called Maya, a law school friend from college, explaining the situation as vaguely as possible. After a few sighs over the phone, Maya confirmed, if the paperwork's legit and tied to a charity, a public annulment could get messy. They might demand a hearing, and if the press catches wind, it'll blow up. "Are you sure you want to make a big deal out of this?" Jennifer hung up, staring at the ceiling. Make a big deal? She didn't want that. She just wanted the paper gone, and Elliot Grayson with it. But he, with his subtle smile and eyes that seemed to know all her secrets, had made things far more complicated. He was Kane Capital's CEO, the man deciding Brightwave's future. If she caused a scene, not only would her reputation take a hit, but her company could suffer too. The next morning, Jennifer entered Brightwave's office with renewed resolve. Confront Elliot and force him to sign the annulment. She wore a gray office dress, hair tied high, projecting professionalism to mask the storm inside. But as she stepped into the open workspace, Lena pounced like a curious cat. "Morning, mystery girl," Lena said, clutching a coffee cup. "Ready for a day with our super hot new boss? I heard he's coming to check progress today." Jennifer nearly dropped her bag. "Elliot, Mr. Grayson's here? Today?" She tried to recover, but Lena's eyebrows shot up, her grin widening. "Elliot, huh? Since when are you on a first-name basis?" Lena nudged her. "Come on, spill. I saw how he looked at you in the meeting. There's something very intriguing going on." "Nothing intriguing," Jennifer snapped, feeling her face heat up. She hurried to her desk, trying to focus on emails. But her mind drifted to her brief talk with Elliot after the meeting. He'd refused to sign, with some vague excuse about timing. What game was he playing? Using her to control Brightwave? Or just enjoying her misery? At noon, the marketing team was called to the meeting room to report on the new campaign's progress. Jennifer stood at the whiteboard, outlining the ad plan, keeping her voice steady despite her racing heart as Elliot walked in. He sat at the table's end, silently observing, but his gaze made her feel like a specimen under a microscope. "Ms. Vale," Elliot spoke up as she finished, his voice low and deliberate. "Your plan lacks a personal touch. Customers want to feel connected. What do you think about adding a story, say an unexpected relationship to highlight the brand?" Jennifer gripped the marker, hiding her fluster. He was doing it again, hinting at their situation in the middle of a meeting. "I agree connection matters," she said, her voice wavering. "But I think we should focus on data, not fictional stories." A colleague, Tom, jumped in. "I like Grayson's idea. A love story, maybe. Like two people meeting in a crazy situation and getting married out of nowhere." He laughed, unaware he'd hit a nerve. Jennifer blurted, "Married out of nowhere? Who'd do something that crazy, right, Mr. Grayson?" She bit her lip, realizing she'd almost said, "husband." The room went quiet for a second until Lena's giggle broke the tension. "Oh, Jennifer, you're too stressed," Lena said, winking. "What were you about to call Mr. Grayson? Husband?" Jennifer's face burned. She glanced at Elliot, expecting mockery, but he just gave a faint smile, his eyes glinting as if savoring the moment. "I think Miss Vale was joking," he said smoothly, "but I like her enthusiasm." The meeting ended, but Jennifer felt like she'd navigated a minefield. She waited until the room cleared, then cornered Elliot at the door. "We need to talk, now." He tilted his head, unsurprised. "Always in a rush, Miss Vale?" he asked, but gestured for her to follow him to a quiet hallway corner. Jennifer crossed her arms, her voice low but sharp. "I looked it up. Annulment's tricky because of Willow Creek's stupid charity fund. But I don't care. You need to sign the papers now, or I'll go to the town myself and make a scene. Elliot's gaze shifted from playful to serious. You think making a scene will fix this? You know who I am. If this leaks, the press will pounce. Not just you, Brightwave could take a hit. Want your company to be a laughingstock while I'm evaluating it? Jennifer froze. He was right. Kane Capital was scrutinizing Brightwave's every move. A scandal, even a small one, could derail the deal. Or worse, cost her team their jobs. So what do you want? She asked, her voice trembling with anger and helplessness. To hold me hostage forever? Elliot stepped closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. I'm not holding you hostage, Jennifer. I just want clarity before signing anything. For now, we keep this quiet. You do your job well, and I'll make sure this gets resolved. She searched his face for deceit, but his eyes were steady, almost sincere. You mean if I do well, you'll sign the annulment? She asked, skeptical. Elliot nodded, but that subtle smile returned. Do your job and I'll sign. But if you fail, he paused, his gaze assessing her. Don't blame me. Jennifer wanted to scream, to punch the wall, but she gave a stiff nod. Fine, but don't think you control me, Grayson. He chuckled, turning away. I don't want to control you, Jennifer. I just want to see what you do next. Back at her desk, Lena was waiting, eyes gleaming. Another private chat with the big boss? I swear there's something between you two. Jennifer sighed, collapsing into her chair. There's nothing, she said. But inside, she knew she'd just entered a game she wasn't sure she could win. And Elliot Grayson, with those damned eyes, held the strongest card. Jennifer Vale entered her second week of work since her life was upended by a marriage certificate and a CEO with an enigmatic smile. She tried to keep things orderly, waking early, doing yoga to stay calm, drinking black coffee without sugar, and absolutely not thinking about Elliot Grayson. But this morning, as she stepped into Brightwave's office, Lena ambushed her with news like a slow-motion bomb. Jennifer, you've been picked as the main liaison for the big ad project with Kane Capital, Lena said, her voice a mix of excitement and envy. You'll work directly with Mr. Grayson. God, I'm so jealous. Jennifer nearly spilled her coffee. Work directly? With him? She tried to sound calm, but inside she wanted to scream. Working with Elliot meant seeing him daily, facing those piercing eyes and cryptic remarks that made her want to crawl into a hole. Why me? Lena shrugged, her smile sly. Probably because you're good, or because he likes you. I saw how he looked at you in last week's meeting. Something very shady's going on. Nothing shady, Jennifer snapped, feeling her cheeks warm. She dodged Lena, sat at her desk, and opened her email. Sure enough, a meeting invite from Kane Capital sat prominently in her inbox, listing her and Elliot as project leads. She sighed, telling herself, it's just work. I'll do well, he'll sign the annulment, and this will end. The first meeting was that afternoon in Brightwave's sleek, glass-walled conference room. Jennifer arrived early, organizing documents and checking presentation slides. The project was an ad campaign for a new soft drink brand, and she'd spent the weekend perfecting her idea, a story about unexpected life moments connected by the drink's flavor. She was confident in her plan, but when Elliot walked in, her confidence wavered. He wore a light gray suit, no tie, looking both professional and annoyingly relaxed. Hello, Ms. Vale, he said, sitting across from her. Ready to work with me? Jennifer forced a stiff smile, ignoring how he emphasized, with me. I'm always ready for work, Mr. Grayson, she replied, her tone rigid. I hope you are too. Elliot raised an eyebrow, his eyes glinting as if enjoying the exchange. Oh, I'm always ready, he said, and she swore there was a hint of teasing in his voice. The meeting began with Brightwave's marketing team and a few Kane Capital reps. Jennifer presented her idea, her voice steadying as she spoke about the campaign. But each time she glanced at Elliot, she caught him watching her, not critically, but curiously, like he was trying to decipher a book he hadn't fully understood. When she moved to a slide about ad design, Elliot stood and approached the screen. Let me see this part, he said, pointing to a layout detail. He stood close enough for her to catch a faint woody cologne. When he touched the laptop to zoom in, his hand brushed hers. Jennifer flinched, like she'd been shocked. She stepped back, heart pounding. I, I'll adjust it, she said quickly, hiding her fluster. But Elliot's glance flicked to her, and she swore he knew he'd rattled her. Your idea's solid, he said, returning to his seat, but it needs more emotion. Customers want to feel a connection, not just see pretty visuals. He paused, locking eyes with her. Think you can manage that, Jennifer? She swallowed, unsure if he meant the campaign or something else. I'll do my best, she replied, her voice slightly hoarse. The meeting continued, but Jennifer felt like she'd just faced a test she wasn't sure she'd passed. After the meeting, she stayed to gather her documents, trying to regain composure. She opened her bag to stow her laptop and froze. In a small pocket, glinting under the light, was the silver ring, the wedding ring she'd deliberately left at the homestay. She picked it up, the metal cold in her hand. How did this get here? She whispered, pulse racing. She racked her brain. She was certain she'd left the ring on the table. Had someone at the homestay slipped it into her bag? Or? She glanced at the door where Elliot had just left. No, he couldn't have. He hadn't even been in her room after she left. But the suspicion grew, making her wonder if that night in Willow Creek held more strangeness than she'd thought. That afternoon, Jennifer met Lena at the company cafeteria, hoping a cold tea would clear her head. But Lena, as usual, wouldn't let her be. Hey, I saw you and Grayson in the meeting. You blushed when he got close. Anything to share? Jennifer shook her head, sipping her tea. Nothing, just work. He's annoying, that's all. Lena tilted her head, studying her. Annoying, huh? I heard he was engaged years ago. Some gorgeous woman, but she ditched him right before the wedding. Since then, he's been cold as ice. But with you, he seems different. Jennifer paused mid-sip, looking at Lena. Different how? Lena shrugged. Like he actually notices you, not just boss-to-employee stuff. I don't know. Maybe I'm imagining it. She laughed, but Jennifer didn't join in. The rumor about Elliot unsettled her. He'd been betrayed? That explained his iciness. But why did she care? She returned to her desk, trying to focus on the campaign, but the ring in her bag felt like it was whispering to her. She pulled it out, turning it between her fingers. It wasn't beautiful or expensive, but something about it stopped her from tossing it. She stashed it in a drawer, determined not to let it control her. At day's end, the marketing team held a brief meeting to update progress. Jennifer presented some campaign tweaks, deliberately avoiding Elliot's gaze. But when she finished, he spoke up unexpectedly. Ms. Vale, he said, his voice low and clear. Your new ideas are impressive. I like how you've added surprise to the story. It feels real. He smiled, not his usual teasing smirk, but a genuine smile that caught her off guard. The room applauded, but Jennifer only heard her heartbeat. She nodded, mumbling, "Thank you," and quickly packed up. As everyone left, she stayed behind, staring out the window. The sunset bathed the office in gold, but her mind held one question. What's his game? She knew she needed distance. Elliot Grayson wasn't just her boss. He held her biggest secret, but his gaze, his unexpected praise, and that mysterious ring in her bag made it impossible to stop thinking about him. She shook her head, telling herself, "No, Jennifer, don't let him get in your head." But deep down, she knew that was easier said than done. Jennifer Vale stood before the mirror in her apartment's bathroom, adjusting a deep green office dress to look perfectly professional. Today was her first business trip with Elliot Grayson, and she'd told herself 100 times it was just work. Nothing more, nothing less. But every time she imagined sitting beside him on the flight, facing his sharp eyes and subtle smile, a small storm churned in her stomach. "Focus, Jennifer," she muttered, tying her hair into a neat bun. "Just a big client. Just one day." The trip to Seattle was to meet representatives of a food conglomerate, a potential client for the ad campaign she and Elliot were developing. She'd prepared thoroughly, from presentation slides to revenue projections. But as she dragged her suitcase to the airport, the silver ring, the one she'd found in her bag last week, glinted in a small pocket. She'd meant to leave it at home, but for some reason, she slipped it into her bag like a reminder of her biggest mistake. Elliot was waiting at the airport gate, tall in a white shirt and gray vest, looking like he'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. "Ms. Vale," he greeted, his voice low but teasing. Hope you're ready to impress. Jennifer forced a stiff smile, pulling her suitcase closer. I'm always ready, Mr. Grayson. Are you? He raised an eyebrow, eyes twinkling. Oh, I was born for this. He gestured for her to join him, and they headed through security, starting a day Jennifer knew wouldn't be easy. The flight was short, but it felt like an eternity to Jennifer. She sat beside Elliot, trying to focus on documents, while he read a business book, occasionally jotting notes with a pencil. Once, during mild turbulence, his hand brushed hers on the armrest. She flinched, glancing at him, but he just gave a faint smile and kept reading, as if nothing happened. Relax, Jennifer, he said without looking up. You're too tense. I'm not tense, she shot back, but her shaky voice betrayed her. Things seemed fine until they reached the Seattle hotel. Jennifer stood at the front desk, exhausted from the flight and a preliminary client meeting. She handed over her booking card, eager to rest before tomorrow's main presentation, but the receptionist, after a few minutes of typing, looked up with an awkward smile. Sorry, Ms. Vale. There seems to be a mix-up. We only have one room booked for both of you. A double, but, with one bed. Jennifer felt the blood drain from her face. One bed? She nearly shouted, drawing looks from the lobby. She glanced at Elliot, standing beside her, his expression unchanged. No, no, no! This is a mistake! We need 2 separate rooms! Elliot placed a hand on the counter, voice calm. I'm certain I booked 2 rooms. Check again. The receptionist fumbled for a few more minutes, then shook her head. I'm so sorry, there was a system error. The hotel's fully booked due to a conference. We can arrange a rollaway bed, but it'll take a few hours. Jennifer clutched her head, feeling like fate was laughing at her. Once again, she was stuck with Elliot Grayson in a situation she wanted to flee. Great, she muttered. Willow Creek all over again. Elliot looked at her, a hint of amusement in his eyes. Don't worry, Ms. Vale. I'll take the sofa. We just need to get through tonight. She wanted to argue, but exhaustion won. She nodded, took the room key, and they hauled their suitcases upstairs. The room wasn't bad, spacious with a window overlooking the city's twinkling lights. But the king-size bed in the center was a relentless reminder of the homestay mix-up. Jennifer tossed her bag onto a chair and turned to Elliot. You're taking the sofa, right? He nodded, slipping off his vest and hanging it up. Right? I'm a gentleman. But his eyes glinted like he was trying not to laugh. While waiting for the rollaway bed, they sat at a small table in the room, reviewing presentation materials. The initial tension eased as they discussed the campaign. Jennifer was surprised to find Elliot not just smart, but insightful about client approaches. He suggested adding a short storytelling video, and she had to admit it meshed well with her plan. Have you ever done advertising? She asked, unable to hide her curiosity. Elliot chuckled, the first genuine laugh she'd heard from him, free of teasing. No, but I like good stories. And you, Jennifer, tell them well. She blushed, looking down at her papers to hide it. The conversation flowed, and for the first time, they talked about things beyond work. Jennifer shared a college presentation flop that had the whole class laughing. Elliot countered with a story of getting lost in a forest while camping, misled by a faulty GPS. So you're not as perfect as you look, she blurted, then bit her lip, regretting it. Elliot tilted his head, his gaze warm. Nobody's perfect, Jennifer. But if we were really married... He paused, looking straight at her. What would you want from me? The question stunned her. She opened her mouth but didn't know how to respond. What do you mean? She stammered. He shrugged as if it was casual. Just curious. If it wasn't a mistake, if it was real, what would you expect? She stared at him, searching for mockery, but his eyes were surprisingly sincere. I don't know, she said softly. Maybe honesty. And someone who doesn't make me feel like I'm walking a tightrope. He nodded like he was filing it away. I'll keep that in mind. The next morning, the presentation took place in the food conglomerate's sleek boardroom. Jennifer stood before the clients, trying to keep her voice steady, but when the slide shifted to data analysis, she blanked on a key figure. Panic hit, memories of her college failure flooding back, her hands trembling. Elliot, seated beside her, sensed her tension. He stood, pretending to add a point. Ms. Vale prepared a detailed analysis, he said, his voice calm and firm. Let me clarify. The figure we're discussing is a 15% projected growth, correct? He looked at her, his eyes reassuring. Jennifer nodded, taking a deep breath to steady herself. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Grayson. She continued, and the presentation ended with applause from the clients. As they left the room, she turned to Elliot, her voice low. Thank you. I almost ruined everything. He smiled, not his teasing smirk, but a warm smile. Everyone gets nervous. You did great, Jennifer. Her heart raced at his unexpected use of you. On the way back to the hotel, she stayed quiet, her mind a mess. Elliot wasn't just a cold CEO or the keeper of her secret. He was the man who'd saved her from her worst moment, and that confused her more than she wanted to admit. As she packed to leave, she glanced at the ring in her bag. She didn't hate Elliot anymore. She knew that. But as his gaze met hers at the airport, she told herself, you can't like him, Jennifer. You can't. But her heart, for the first time, wasn't listening. Jennifer Vale walked into Brightwave's office with mixed emotions after the Seattle trip. She couldn't shake the moment Elliot Grayson saved her from panic during the presentation, or his strange question, if we were really married, what would you want from me? Those words lingered, leaving her both confused and irritated. She didn't want to think about him more than necessary, but every time she opened her bag and saw the silver ring glinting, her heart skipped a beat. She tried focusing on work, refining the ad campaign based on feedback from the Seattle client. But something felt off at Brightwave today. Lena, as usual, pounced with a coffee cup and fresh gossip. Jennifer, heard the news? Lena whispered, eyes gleaming. A new partner from a big media firm is coming today. Word is she's drop-dead gorgeous and tied to Grayson somehow. Drama's brewing. Jennifer frowned, feigning disinterest. A partner's got nothing to do with me. I'm busy, Lena. But a bad feeling stirred inside her. She shook it off, telling herself it was her imagination, and turned back to her computer. The meeting with the new partner was set for noon in the familiar glass-walled conference room. Jennifer arrived early, organizing documents, trying to stay sharp. When Kane Capital's team entered, she spotted Elliot immediately. He wore a deep blue shirt, no vest, looking relaxed yet commanding. He nodded at her, his gaze briefly warm, but she quickly looked away, unwilling to get drawn in. Then the door opened again, and a woman walked in. She was tall, with sleek, blonde hair cascading down, sharp green eyes that seemed to pierce through secrets. Her striking red office dress was both elegant and attention-grabbing. Jennifer heard Lena whistle softly beside her. Wow, she's straight out of a Hollywood movie. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Carson, Brightwave's director, announced, we're delighted to welcome Ms. Alice Monroe from Nexus Media, our new partner for the campaign. Ms. Monroe will work closely with us and Kane Capital. Alice smiled, a perfect smile that chilled Jennifer. As Alice's gaze swept the room, it lingered on Elliot a second longer than normal. Jennifer glanced at him, and for the first time, she saw him tense. Just a flicker, but enough to notice. What's going on, she wondered. The meeting began, but Jennifer struggled to focus. Alice discussed collaboration plans with confident ease, occasionally glancing at Elliot as if seeking his attention. Elliot, in contrast, kept a neutral expression, asking only professional questions. Jennifer tried to contribute, but each time she spoke, she felt Alice's eyes on her, assessing. After the meeting, as people started leaving, Alice approached Jennifer. You're Jennifer Vale, right? She asked, her voice sweet but edged with coldness. I've heard you're Brightwave's star. Elliot's mentioned you a few times. Jennifer blinked, unsure she'd heard right. Mr. Grayson mentioned me, she asked, keeping her voice steady. Alice smiled, tilting her head. Oh yes, he said you're very special, but I'm not surprised. Elliot's always had an eye for people, though sometimes... She paused, her eyes glinting. He's just trying to move past old wounds. Her words hit Jennifer like an arrow. She gripped the table's edge, hiding her unease. What do you mean? She asked, her voice low but sharp. Alice shrugged as if chatting idly. Just that. I know Elliot well. He was hurt badly once, And sometimes he does impulsive things to cope, like finding a replacement. She looked directly at Jennifer, smile unwavering. But don't worry, I'm not the jealous type. I just want to help him. Jennifer's face burned. Replacement? Was Alice implying Elliot was using her to forget her? She wanted to retort, but before she could, Elliot appeared behind Alice. Alice, he said, his voice low but icy, I think Nexus is waiting for you. Alice turned, her smile unshaken. Of course, Elliot. I was just getting to know Ms. Vale. She's as interesting as you said. She winked at Jennifer and left, leaving a heavy air like a storm was coming. Jennifer faced Elliot, heart pounding. She didn't want a scene, but Alice's words gnawed at her. Who is she? She asked, her voice trembling. And why does she say you're using me? Elliot frowned, his eyes darkening. What did Alice tell you? Jennifer crossed her arms, standing her ground. She said you were hurt and I'm just a replacement. You married me to get back at her, didn't you? She blurted it out, louder than intended, and regretted it as a few colleagues glanced over. Elliot stepped closer, his voice low but taut. You think I'm that petty? That I'd orchestrate a marriage for revenge? Jennifer flushed but didn't back down. I don't know what you think, Grayson, but she clearly knows you well, and she's trying to make me doubt you. If it's not revenge, why won't you sign the annulment? Why drag this out? They stood there inches apart, the air thick with tension. Jennifer waited for an explanation, anything to untangle the chaos in her heart. But Elliot just looked at her, his eyes a mix of anger and hurt. She's not worth my revenge, he said finally, his voice hoarse. But you, Jennifer, you're different. He paused as if wanting to say more, but then turned and walked away, leaving her with a heart in turmoil. Jennifer returned to her desk, mind spinning. Lena predictably pounced with questions. Oh my God, Jennifer, I saw you arguing with Grayson. Anything juicy? And who's that Alice woman? Jennifer shook her head, slumping into her chair. I don't know, Lena, but I think things just got worse. She opened her desk drawer, staring at the silver ring. Alice's words echoed, replacement. She wanted to believe Elliot wasn't that kind of man, but Alice's gaze and his silence fueled her doubts. She'd started seeing him differently, not just a cold CEO, but someone who could stir her heart. But what if it was all a game? She closed her eyes, trying to banish the image of Elliot standing before her, his voice rough as he said, You're different. But instead of reassuring her, those words only scared her more. Scared her that she was falling for something she couldn't control. Jennifer Vale sat in Brightwave's office as the sunset bathed the large glass windows in gold. It was nearly 8 p.m., and most colleagues had gone home, leaving her with a pile of campaign documents needing revisions before the deadline. But her mind wasn't there. It was circling Elliot Grayson, the man who both infuriated and confused her, especially after last week's confrontation with Alice Monroe. Alice's insinuation that Jennifer was merely a replacement still rooted itself in her thoughts, despite her efforts to brush it off. She heard soft footsteps and looked up to see Elliot at the meeting room door, holding a coffee cup. Still here? He asked, his voice low, lacking its usual teasing edge. He wore a white shirt, sleeves rolled up, looking tired but still radiating an undeniable pull. Jennifer shrugged, keeping her tone neutral. Work doesn't finish itself. What about you? I thought CEOs didn't do overtime. Elliot gave a small laugh, stepping inside and sitting across from her. Sometimes I like staying late. It's quieter. He set the coffee down, studying her for a long moment, as if weighing something. You okay, Jennifer? After the thing with Alice? She stiffened, not expecting him to bring it up. I'm fine, she said quickly, but her voice wavered. Just don't like being dragged into someone else's drama. Elliot nodded, his eyes darkening. Alice shouldn't have said those things. She has a knack for stirring trouble. Jennifer couldn't hold back. Then why does she think you're using me? She said you were hurt, and I'm just a way to forget her. She stopped, realizing she'd said too much. But she was tired of unanswered questions, tired of a game whose rules she didn't understand. Elliot stayed silent, his fingers tapping lightly on the table. Then he sighed, a heavy sound she'd never heard from him. Want the truth? He asked, his gaze locking onto hers. Jennifer nodded, her heart racing. Yes, I want to know what you're thinking, Grayson. I'm done guessing. He looked out the window where the city lights were flickering on. Alice and I were engaged 3 years ago. I thought she was the one I'd spend my life with, but a week before the wedding, she left. No explanation, just a text. I can't do this. Later, I found out she'd been with someone else for a while. His voice was steady, but Jennifer heard the pain beneath each word. She blinked, unprepared for his openness. I'm sorry, she said softly. That must have been rough. Elliot turned back to her, his eyes softening. It changed me. I froze everything. Emotions, trust, all of it. I thought it was safer, but then... He paused, a faint smile forming. Then you came along, Jennifer, with your fire and stubbornness. You made me want to... try again. Her heart tightened. She wanted to believe him, but fear held her back. Try again? She asked, her voice trembling. What does that mean? We're just an accident, Elliot. A mistaken paper. He leaned closer, near enough that she saw flecks of light in his eyes. Maybe an accident, he said, but what I feel around you isn't random. You make me want to live for real, not hide behind the shell I built. She stared at him, unsure how to respond. Before she could speak, he reached out, lightly touching her hand on the table. I'm not promising perfection, Jennifer, he said, his voice rough, but I promise I won't hurt you. Time seemed to pause. His hand was warm, steady, and for a second Jennifer wanted to hold it, to believe he meant it. But then she remembered her parents, their endless fights, broken promises, and the divorce that made her fear love since childhood. She pulled her hand back, standing, her voice shaky. I need time, Elliot. I'm not good with this stuff. He nodded, not pushing. I'll wait, he said, and the sincerity in his voice made her want to cry. Jennifer gathered her things and left the office, her heart in knots. As she stepped outside, the city lights blurred in her eyes. She wondered if she could dare trust Elliot, or herself. Jennifer Vale woke to a text from Lena. Check the news now, you're famous. Frowning, she opened her laptop, and her heart nearly stopped at a headline on an entertainment site. Kane Capital's CEO secretly married to Brightwave marketing lead? The article didn't name her, but the details, a wine festival, a surprise marriage, were too precise to be coincidence. Scrolling down, she saw a blurry photo of her and Elliot leaving the Willow Creek homestay, clearly taken without their knowledge. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Colleagues, friends, even her mom calling from afar. Jennifer felt suffocated. She went to the office, trying to keep a calm face, but Brightwave felt like a pressure cooker. Lena cornered her at the door. Jennifer, what's going on? Are you actually married to Grayson? Why didn't you tell me? It's not real, Jennifer said quickly, but her voice was weak. Just rumors. But Lena's skeptical look made her want to disappear. In the meeting room, Elliot was already there, his expression grim. You saw the article? He asked, voice low. Jennifer nodded, avoiding his eyes. I've got PR handling it, he said, but we need to stay calm. Going public now will only make it worse. Jennifer clenched her fists, feeling trapped. Calm? Everyone's staring at me like I'm in some trashy movie. I can't work like this. Elliot stepped closer, his eyes full of concern. Jennifer, I'll fix this. Just trust me. But her trust was crumbling. She returned to her desk, hearing whispers from colleagues. One even asked outright, Jennifer, what's the deal with you and Grayson? Did you really get married? She forced a smile, but inside she felt like she was falling apart. That evening, her mom called again, voice heavy with reproach. Jennifer, if you got married, why didn't you tell me? You know how serious marriage is. Jennifer tried to explain, but each word reminded her of the pain from her parents' divorce, and she feared repeating their mistakes. She decided to act. She wrote a resignation letter and placed it on Mr. Carson's desk the next morning. When Elliot found out, he called her to his office. Jennifer, what are you doing? He asked, his voice tense. She took a deep breath, meeting his gaze. I don't want to be a burden, Elliot. If I stay, the rumors won't stop. Let me go. Elliot looked at her, his eyes filled with pain, as if she'd stabbed him. "You think leaving will fix this?" he asked, voice hoarse. "You're not a burden, Jennifer. You're—" He stopped, unable to finish. Jennifer turned away, tears welling up. "I'm sorry," she whispered, leaving the office. As she walked out, Elliot's pained look burned into her memory, but she told herself this was her only choice. Jennifer Vale sat on the sofa in her small apartment, staring at the white envelope on the coffee table. It had arrived that morning, with no sender's name, but the firm handwriting spelling Jennifer Vale told her instantly who it was from. Her heart pounded as she opened it, pulling out a simple sheet, an annulment request. Her name and Elliot Grayson sat side by side, a reminder of the strange mistake that started it all. But what stopped her cold was a small folded note attached, with a handwritten line. "If you sign, I'll sign. But if you come back, I'll wait." She read it over and over, her fingers trembling. Elliot's message was brief, but each word carved into her heart. A week had passed since she submitted her resignation at Brightwave, and she tried to avoid thinking about him, about the pain in his eyes as she left his office, about how he called her Jennifer instead of Ms. Vale in that final moment. But now this annulment form felt like a challenge. She could end it all, or face what scared her most, her own heart. Jennifer stood, pacing the room. She needed space, needed to think. She grabbed her phone, checked her email, and a sudden idea struck. The Willow Creek homestay, where it all began. Maybe returning there would give her answers. She booked a room, double-checking to ensure no mix-ups this time, and drove to the mountains, her mind a tangle of emotions. When she arrived at the homestay in the late afternoon, golden sunlight filtered through the trees, lighting up the front garden. The homestay was just as she remembered, a rustic wooden house, a porch draped with vines, and a small garden bursting with wildflowers. The scent of fresh-cut grass and faint wood lingered, making her smile fleetingly. The owner, an older woman with a kind grin, greeted her like an old friend. "Welcome back, dear," she said, handing over the room key. "No wine festival this time, so you're safe." Jennifer gave a strained smile, took the key and entered the familiar room. It was unchanged. The double bed with the blue wool blanket, the small wooden table by the window, and floral curtains swaying gently in the breeze. She set her bag down, sat on the bed, and felt time rewind. She recalled waking beside Elliot, the mix of panic and humor, and how he handled it calmly, despite being just as stunned. She opened her bag, pulling out the silver ring. She'd brought it along, unsure why. She turned it in her fingers, its surface catching the light. Then she stood, wandering the room, as if searching for a clue. When she bent to look under the table, she froze. Another ring, identical to hers, lay quietly in the corner, dusted lightly. She picked it up, heart racing. "Why are there two?" she whispered. Was it Elliot's, forgotten from that night? Or was fate trying to tell her something? She sat by the window, gazing at the garden. Wildflowers swayed in the breeze, and the sunset cast a golden glow. She thought of Elliot, his initial coldness, how he slowly opened up, the pain he carried from his past. She remembered him holding her hand, promising not to hurt her. Then she thought of herself, her fear of marriage from her parents' failures, her fear of falling short, and her fear that she wasn't brave enough to love. She held the annulment form, staring at her blank signature line. Signing it would end everything. She'd be free, unbound by a mistake. But as she picked up a pen, her hand shook. She didn't want to sign. Not because she feared legal trouble, but because she realized what she truly wanted. Elliot, not as a mistake, but as a choice. She grabbed her phone, took a deep breath, and dialed his number. It rang twice before he answered, his familiar low voice. "Jennifer? I need to see you," she said, steadier than she expected. "Right now." Jennifer stood in the homestay garden, the night breeze rustling through the wildflowers. The moon hung in the sky, bathing everything in a soft silver glow. She clutched both rings tightly, her heart racing as she heard a car stop at the gate. She knew it was Elliot. He'd driven straight after her call, asking only, "Where are you?" He stepped into the garden, tall in a black shirt and jeans, a far cry from the CEO she knew. His eyes found her instantly, and as he approached, she saw tension mixed with hope in them. "Jennifer," he said, his voice rough, "you called me here. What's wrong?" She took a deep breath, stepping closer. "I got the annulment form," she said, pulling the paper from her bag. "And your note." Elliot looked at the paper, then at her. "So, you want to sign it?" he asked, his voice low, betraying a fear he tried to hide. She shook her head, a faint smile forming. "I thought I did. I was scared. Of you. Of me. Of this. But standing here, I realized I don't want to run anymore." She opened her hand, revealing both rings. "I found this one in the room. Maybe it's yours. But I want us to keep them both. For real this time." Elliot stared at her, his eyes brightening under the moonlight. "Jennifer, what are you saying?" She stepped nearer, her voice trembling but firm. "I want us to try, Elliot, not because of a mistaken paper, but because I trust you. And I think I love you." He stood there as if unable to believe his ears. Then he reached out, gently touching her cheek. "I've been waiting for you to say that," he whispered. "I want you, Jennifer. Not as an accident, not as fate. I want you as my choice." He knelt, taking one ring from her hand, the moonlight glinting on its silver. "Jennifer Vale, will you give me a chance to be your husband? For real this time?" She laughed, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Yes," she said, voice choking. He slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood, pulling her into a tight embrace. She felt his warmth, the familiar woody cologne, and for the first time, she wasn't afraid. They stood in the garden, moonlight enveloping them like a blessing. Jennifer slid the other ring onto his finger, and they held hands, saying nothing more. Their story began with a mistake, but now it was a decision, a future they chose together. As they left the garden, hand in hand, the moonlight still shone, as if smiling at two people who'd found each other, not through fate, but through their own hearts. Thank you for following this heartfelt story of Soul Stories channel. Share your thoughts about the story in the comments below. If you believe that true love can withstand all trials and sometimes begins in the simplest of ways, don't forget to hit the like button and share this story with your friends. To never miss out on touching and meaningful stories, subscribe to our channel and help us spread messages of love and warmth to everyone. Let's cherish the beautiful moments of life and love together.